Deanna, are you going to, okay. Moving on to the next agenda item, the approval of the minutes of the special meeting
Excuse me, Bob, in terms of correspondence, do we just acknowledge receipt or do we?
Yes.
That's it?
Yep.
So it's an advisory thing. Okay.
Any other questions, comments on the correspondence? Again, it's unusual. And all the time I've been on the board, I think we've gotten, this might be the second or third letter. It doesn't come all that often.
Bob, we had a lot of correspondence last budget season. You know, there was a big pain, you know, so there's normally letters and emails. I would consider that.
Yeah, fair enough. Yep, those came into the mailbox, right? Yep, that's true. Okay, moving on to approval of the minutes of the special meeting from May 4th, 2021. As the minutes were distributed in advance, entertain a motion to accept the minutes as submitted.
So moved.
Bob, I just have, Dion, there wasn't a recording of approving the minutes from the meeting before. I read, I let Bob know that. Was that fixed?
Well, no, I mean, it couldn't have been fixed. It was in the minutes.
It wasn't, I read it and I didn't see in the minutes that we approved the meeting before.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant the video. The minutes did not, it didn't say that we approved them. Okay, well then that needs to be added.
I think you redid the agenda. I'm sorry, the minutes, the date was wrong on it too. I thought I read. Bob, was that right?
No, that was fixed.
The date was corrected. Let's see, give me a second, please.
We approved the minute, the meeting before, but it wasn't in the minutes.
That's correct. Yep. All right, so subject to Nick's edit, I entertain a motion to accept the minutes as submitted.
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next agenda item is the consideration of the Board of Finance rep to the Board of Ed's teachers contract negotiations. Turn it over to Dr. Carver and to Teri.
Sure. So I can't believe we're in the process of start opening our negotiations with our teachers. This is the third time I've negotiated the contract since being in Bethel. And every year we're required by statute to come to the Board of Finance and to do two things: garner your input in terms of what you'd like to see us consider as part of the negotiations process. And then secondly, we would need a rep. We would invite one Board of Finance member to be what they call a non-voting rep, or somebody who would like to sit in on negotiations. I will say that it's a big time commitment. There's probably at least 4 or 5 nights. At least one of those nights goes all night into the morning. And so I just want to warn you up front that there's quite a time commitment associated with it. So just those two things. Teri, did I leave anything out?
No, and if someone, you were sent both the request and a copy of the current teachers agreement. So if you have, if you hadn't had a chance to really go through the whole agreement and you had some thoughts, you could share that with your rep for when they're part of the negotiation.
So yeah, that's a great point, Teri. So you don't have to give us all your feedback tonight either. If you want to send us an email or through your rep, either way would be fine.
Question. Why would they not? You're asking one of us to be on it, but not a voting member?
It's a statute, Nick. Correct, Carrie?
Yes. So there's a state statute that your financial authority it should be invited to have a representative at the negotiations. Now, normally at the table, none of us speak other than our spokesperson anyway. The representative.
To be clear, we don't vote.
Right. We don't really vote. I mean, we discuss, The rep is welcome to discuss with us in caucus
Right.
and bring their thoughts, or bring the thoughts of
Board
I
of
think the
Finance.
point is the town's ability to pay in general, and that would rest with the fiscal authority of the
Right.
town. So there's representation in the process, and they are a member that has participates in our discussion as we caucus in between the actual sessions across the table.
So would they be listened to, or is it just a puppet show? I mean,
No, our attorney who represents the board, and typically 2 or 3 board members sit on it. I sit on it. Teri, Dr. Brooks sits on this committee to negotiate on the side of the Board of Ed. If you've been through the negotiation process, we both submit proposals based on what we'd like to see changed in the contract. And we have discussions back and forth. And then the teachers have a group of people that represent, they have a negotiation committee. And they also, our attorney, Rebecca Santiago, represents the Board of Ed. The teachers have a representative from the Connecticut Education Association. And we review the proposals and discuss them and try to come to resolution on both language issues and financial issues for that reflect over the next 3 years. And so, as Teri said, typically what happens is, after we developed and present those proposals, we go back and forth in discussions between the two group. Most of the people, when we're actually all together, who engage in that discussion are our attorney and the CEA rep. And then we caucus, where we go back into the room and we give input in terms of what we think that we'd like to see as a result of whatever the issue is. Is that fair, Teri?
Yes.
And that's
So
what the
there's-
process is.
Yes, there's open and lively discussion. The teachers have it's the way all the bargaining unit, they have it on the town side too. It's a typical way that negotiations occur. You go back into caucus and you have a lot of freedom then in the board side, separate from the teacher side, to really discuss out what points maybe they made at the table, and whether this really does make sense or doesn't make sense, and so the rep is truly involved in the discussion.
Right, in the discussions, absolutely, 100%.
As much as I am. I mean,
Right.
I may be asked to provide some, could you cost this out or something like that, but in terms of discussions towards resolution and understanding how it impacts the operations of the business, as well as the financial overall health of the town of Bethel, those discussions take place. And the rep has always been a very active
part of it.
Yeah.
okay. And again, to my board, I think this is very important for somebody to be on it and actually get engaged, because people grab time during budget season, and when these contracts are signed, that ship has sailed. We have to pay our bills when it was negotiated. So Bob, whoever gets this position, I think they need to, go with real questions, and because we have to the taxpayers, and this is the opportunity when the thing is being negotiated. So
And just
I agree completely, Nick, and that's why I really we'll talk about it some more, right? But I really want the person who is interested in doing this, assuming there is, that person being there, right? Being present at the meetings, right? Because you can't be influential if you're not at the meetings.
And to be fair, you've always sent a rep, and they've always been very actively involved in these discussions.
All right. Any further questions for Dr. Carver or Teri? All right. Any volunteers?
I'd like to nominate Karen Foster.
All right. You got a second on Karen? I think we got D. Karen, is this something? Oh, I'm sorry, Nick.
well, if Karen is going to be the person that you guys nominate, because again, I'm only one guy on a boat here. Can we hear from Karen what some of her ideas and thoughts would be?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask Karen, what do you think? Karen, are you interested? And what's your kind of at least initial thinking?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested. I certainly have the time to do it. I can't imagine missing a meeting. I mean, I'm retired, so I've got time to deal with that. I've got kids in school, so I'm certainly interested in this. That's going to give me a perspective, I think, that someone who doesn't have kids in school wouldn't have. Could be either way, but it'll be a different perspective. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in participating in this. I think that there's it sounds like there's a lot of lively discussion. I'm certainly capable of participating in lively discussion, and I'm not shy about giving my input. And definitely carrying the information back and forth, whatever the board wants me to carry forward, and whatever happens at the meeting will be carried back to the board. So that's kind of the role of this position, really, is to communicate back and forth.
Just to be clear, when that process is happening, it would have to be done in executive session. You can't publicly talk about any type of proposals that are being in good faith negotiations.
Absolutely.
So I just want to be clear about that.
No, I understand.
I
So
believe.
Karen, what would be your ideas? Some ideas. Are you thinking cost saving? Are you thinking just give what other towns give? Can you give us some insight before we vote on this?
Well, I think that our role as the Board of Finance is always to make sure that the townspeople are getting good value for their taxes. So they're getting the services they want and not paying more taxes than they need to pay. So it's the same as when we're doing the budgeting, looking at what's being proposed and is there a chance for savings here? And I think that's the same goal that everyone on this side of the table would have there. So, it's a negotiation. So as Dr. Carver said, they're going to say their piece and we say our piece, and somewhere we meet in the middle. That's the job of the mediators, is to come to the middle piece. So does that answer your question? I mean, I'm looking at saving the taxpayers as much money as I can while giving them all the services that they need to have.
Okay, I hear you. And again, I always say when someone has a record, you have to stand by the record. So I will be watching.
All right. The motion on the floor, it's been seconded. Any more discussion? All right, not seeing any more discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Unanimous, Karen. Thank you for this. To Dr.
Karen.
Carver's point, it's really important, right? I mean, let's be clear, right? It's a well-known legal process.
Right.
So there are guide rails within the process. So you need to work within those guardrails, but it'll be very important to represent our town, represent this board well. And as we have in the past, we likely will at least once go into executive session to get your thoughts.
And Karen, just so you know, our first meeting, I think, is the 15th of June at 6:15, and that is going to be Zoom, but I do anticipate that we probably will do some in-person meetings after that. The first meeting is just to set dates for the summer.
Okay.
and we welcome you.
Good. No, I'm fine with in-person. I'm fully vaccinated and ready to go.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you all.
Thank
Dr. Carver,
you.
Teri, you guys are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting or maybe go on to other things.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night
Bye.
now. By continuing down the amended agenda, I see that Tom has joined us. We have put the 2021 various water main replacement project topic next. So Tom, do you want to give us a little bit of background to this, please?
Tom,
Sure.
Bob, I need to interrupt for just 1 second. I had somebody join the meeting. It's a phone number. Is that Ryan Terzian? Can you unmute yourself and tell me if that's you?
He's not going to come tonight. He's not going to be here,
So
Brian.
that's not him. Okay, I just wanted to, for my minutes, I just needed to make sure that I wasn't, I was including him in the votes if that was him. Okay.
Dion, it's Melanie O'Brien.
Okay.
It's Melanie O'Brien. Okay, all right.
Melanie, we'll give you that same offer. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting or move on to other important matters.
I appreciate that, Bob. Thank you.
All righty, thanks. Tom, you have the floor.
All right, thank you and good evening. The project before you for consideration is our 2021 various water main replacement project. It's the next in line in the series of capital improvements we've been working on. This particular project is to replace some older and some aging and undersized water mains. They are on School Street, Rector Street, Pleasant Street, and Fleetwood Park. And one of those roads actually coincides with, I think, one of the roads that's going to be up for paving here in the next year or so.
Hey, Tom, I'm sorry, Tom, I was slow on the note taking. School, Rector, Fleet, and what was the fourth?
Pleasant Street,
Thank you.
and it was Fleetwood Park.
Oh, Fleetwood. Okay, Park.
So
Thank
we're
you.
looking at replacing some of our older 4-inch mains. And again, one of the roads is up for repaving here soon. So we try to coincide with Public Works, and if there's any water main work that needs to be done in advance of them paving, we try to get to those.
Okay.
It's similar to our other projects. It's through the State Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. So it encompasses a loan with a 25% grant component.
My
Similar to-
understanding of it, Tom, is that, to your point, similar to some of the other projects, there will be no town of Bethel funding here. It'll all be user funded.
That's correct.
And again, just for the record, the Board of Selectmen approved this at its regular meeting of May 4th to go to a special town meeting on help me out here, Dion.
May 18th.
On the 18th.
Okay. Any further questions for Tom?
Bob, if I can just, are we just kind of guaranteeing this money and the users are going to, you know, if it's no town money, what are we doing? Just explain to me again. I'm a little slow.
No, you got it, Nick. I mean, this is a kind of somewhat unusual thing, right? Anytime any part of the town goes to a loan process or looking to get funding, the Board of Finance is required by charter to approve it for purposes of sending it to a special town meeting. Board of Selectmen does it first under its primary responsibility, right, for capital improvements and overseeing the water company, the PUC, excuse me.
But this money wouldn't come out of our money, that one account that we have for it's going to come from the users of the water, right?
That's right. It'll be funded, Tom, right? It'll be funded by loans, partial grant, and then paid back by user fees.
That is correct.
I'll make a motion to accept this proposal.
Okay.
Second.
And maybe, and Dion, it'll be right. Just to maybe add a little bit to Nick's motion, right? As provided by the Board of Selectmen in its May 4th meeting.
So move.
All right, so we've got a motion, got it seconded. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nick. All right. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you and good evening.
Good night now. All right, next agenda item is the consideration of appointment of the auditor. Bob Kay, we do this annually. You want to kind of fill us in again, please?
Yeah, this is an annual process. We have to report to the state 30 days prior to the end of the fiscal year. So by May 31st, I have to fill out a form and let the state know who the auditor for the current fiscal year is going to be, June 30th of 21. And I continue with the recommendation of PKF O'Connor Davies, and it's Limited Liability Partnership LLP. They've been our auditors for the last few years, done a very good job. We're happy with them, and I like to, see them on for another year or so.
I'd make a motion to accept Bob's recommendation for the auditor.
Second.
Further discussion? Cynthia?
Yeah. Bob Kay, I've tried to get some information about this. I mean, not from you, but and I'm not even sure I'm going to vote on this because I have something outstanding on an issue with an auditor with the Freedom of Information, but I want to know, is that yearly letter that the auditor sends out that asks,
The fraud letter.
yes, I'm
Yeah.
just wondering, I tried to get information about whether that company, because they do other audits for other towns. And I was wondering if that is something that they do for every town they audit, is that part of their process? Because I
Yes,
could,
as a matter of fact, not only with PKF O'Connor Davies, we had it with Cone Resnick, Costin and Rufkus, and JH Cone.
right,
They
that's
all,
like,
well,
that's
you
my
know, they
question.
did it differently, the other firms. They sent it to the Board of Finance chairman, and the chairman would, I guess, canvass the committee, or maybe not, and then responded to it.
Right, that's not what I'm asking. I wasn't apparently clear. I'm asking whether this company does that same letter to every town it works for, like it is auditing other towns in Connecticut.
It's part of the audit plan. So in the audit plan, you have a number of steps that you have to follow. You have to tick and tie. And this is one of the items that they have to, whether they're doing the town of Bethel, Reading, Richfield,
Okay.
Newtown.
So,
Yep.
so that answers my question. So then I just want to say, not a question to you, Bob Kozlowski, but just in general, because my issue is with the process once it gets to us. So, and I'm going to abstain from this vote because I have something outstanding with the Freedom of Information about the process. So carry on. Thanks.
So all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye,
Aye.
and one abstention. Okay, next on the agenda is the consideration of the C10-9 salaries for the fiscal year 21-22. We've talked about this a couple times, I think prior to year end, right? November meeting and December meeting. Per the charter, that section 10-9, this Board of Finance has authority over the salaries of five positions. And those positions are the first select, the selects, the treasurer, the registrar of voters, and the town clerk. And our process has been over the last few years, shortly after the passing of the budget, to review those, the salaries for those groups or for those individuals. So that's what I'd like us to do tonight. Any question on that just general point? Look, we've been through it before. I'm suspecting there are no, but let me just ask to make sure that we're on the same page.
We're gonna keep these separate, right? We're not doing it as a whole group, right? Individual.
One at a time. Yep. Okay. So again, the positions are the first, the selects, the treasurer, the registrar of voters, and the town clerk. I'm going to take these in a particular order, and you'll probably, recognize it as what's referred to as the SAT order. You do the easy ones first, right? As far as the treasurer, I have not heard anyone suggest that the treasurer's salary stipend is out of order, that it is market and it's appropriate for that role. So my suggestion to this board is to leave that treasurer's salary where it is today.
It's $5,500.
That's right.
Do you need a motion for that, Bob?
I don't think so, Nick. I think we only need a motion if we're going to do something.
Okay, and I just want the record to show that we're not changing it. So you're good with the discussion.
Fair enough. Yep. Okay, to that point, Dion, I don't know if you want to note, right, that the decision was made to not adjust the treasurer's role, treasurer's salary. Right. Next, registrar of voters. You may recall that in the budget for the fiscal year 21, the one that will end in June, the registrar of voters voluntarily gave up their asked for raise. This year, they asked for a raise in total of $2,600. That was $1,000 for each registrar and $300. Those are annual adjustments for the, I guess, assistant registrars. Don't know, Bob and or Brad, if that's the right title. I think it's assistant registrars, but they're number twos.
Deputies.
And deputies, so the deputy registrars. So my suggestion to the board would be to grant those requests of, again, $2,600 in total, $1,000 each for the registrars and $300 each for the deputy registrars.
Second,
For the record, can you state the current and what the new stipend would be?
I cannot, but I'm sure Brad can.
The registrars each make $18,000 a year. I believe the deputy registrars are appointed. So I don't know if that is Board of Finance does their salaries or the first selectman. Because they're not elected officials.
All right. Well, how do we get that done? Right, Brad? It was in the budget number and contingency. So do we just then, this board make the adjustment for the registrars and ask Matt or the Board of Selectmen to do it for the deputies?
Why don't you do it for both? And then if it does fall under the first selectman, we will note that it was a recommendation.
Okay.
You are changing it if it is your authority, but recommending if it is not.
Bob, you have a second.
All right. So with that motion made and seconded, all those in favor of the adjustment for the registrar of voters, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Town clerk. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Before we do town clerk, let's go to the selects. We have comps for the town clerk in the first select. For the selects, and Bob, kind of fill in the narrative if I start going astray.
Mhm.
But when Phyllis did a comp of the select roles, the data that came back was all over the place. Some towns pay their selects nothing. It's purely voluntary. And on the other end, there might have been some selects making as much as 10,000. In Bethel, currently, our selects are paid the same as the treasurer, $5,500 a year. And we did that intentionally, right? We had those three roles, the two selects and the registrar, each paid the same, so that folks really were not incentivized by salary to do one versus the other. So with those as the comps that are out there, I'd like us to think about, I'd suggest that we don't necessarily change the base salary for the selects. We leave it at the 5,500. However, pursuant to Charter Section 5-4, Cap C, that is the provision that allows for an acting first selectman. So if the first select is unable to perform the duty that day, there is a formal process by which the first select appoints one of the selects to be the acting select for that period of time. My thoughts on this, really from conferring with Bob, based on some of the Bob K, on some of the data that he had gathered up, is that on the 15th day and beyond, or so for any day beyond 14 days of acting first select, that acting first select will be paid a stipend per day. And Bob, remind me, I thought what you were thinking might be fair, it was $50.
I actually mentioned 75.
Oh, okay.
If you wanted to use 50.
So that's the concept.
$75 per day is what you're saying?
Yes, per day.
After the 2-week period.
75 coincides with someone that's taken the minutes for a meeting, any of the town meetings, and they receive a stipend of $75. So that's why I was using a $75 number.
I think substitute teachers make $100 a day, just if there's any comparison there.
That makes a lot of,
I guess
I hear
it's
them.
up for discussion if you wanted to, you know.
This is the town.
Go ahead, Bob.
I was gonna say, this is the town side, so I would, to Bob's point, if there's comparables on the town side, that does seem to be the right way to go.
Why don't we make a motion so that we can put it in discussion mode?
Fair enough. All right. Just to move the process, I'll make a motion that we adjust the select salary by pursuant to Charter Section 5-4, capital C, such that an acting first selectman, I use that terminology because that's what's in the charter, to the extent the acting first selectman has worked a day beyond 14 days, for each day that person will be compensated $75.
I would second that.
Okay, there's a second discussion. Cynthia.
So my first question would be, has it ever been established before? Has an amount ever been established before? Because it's in the charter, like, meaning, has it ever happened that someone has subbed for more than 14 days?
Bob K.
Yes,
there any
well,
number?
A couple of years ago, Matt had some issues with his parents. Both of them since have passed away. So he was out in Michigan. He was also on vacation out in Washington, the state of Washington. And so he was gone for 4 or 5 weeks, and the selectman had to step in and be the acting.
So did he appoint Richie as the first selectman?
Every time Matt or the first selectman is gone for a period of time, 2 or 3 days or whatever, he has to write a letter authorizing the selectman, and that goes to the town clerk and gets filed.
Yeah, I'm only asking for this 2-week, because it doesn't matter if unless it's 2 weeks, that what we're talking about has to do with a 2-week. My question is, we have a figure of $75. Has it ever been established in the past, the amount of money that would be paid if it went past 2 weeks, which is in the charter? Has that ever been established, ever?
I'm not aware of it, but Bob, you've been around longer. Brad.
But you know what I'm asking?
We've never done that. We've never offered a stipend to the selectmen.
Okay, but it's in the charter that they should be paid if they go beyond 2 weeks.
That doesn't mean they have to be paid. The Board of Finance has the opportunity.
Okay, I didn't know, it sounded like when you said the charter that they should be paid or that they would be paid.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that? Okay.
We're just with Cynthia, we're just cleaning up the charter. Why are we doing it now?
We're not,
We never-
we can't clean up the charter.
Right. That's beyond us.
Yeah, that's, we're not worthy. But I was just asking if any, the amount wouldn't be specified in the charter. We would have done it at some point, but we haven't. And I don't think it's really ever come up. It's just been, anyway. My next question is that something? I'm trying to understand what this has to do with the salary. This is something sort of not really in the salary bucket. It's sort of like, it's another.
It's a stipend.
Yeah, I know what it is. I'm just trying to think of how it fits into the salary adjustments, because it's not really an adjustment. But anyway, my question is answered, that there was never an amount. So now we're saying 75 is the amount that is put on the table.
And Nick, I'm sorry, you looked like you had some comments, but I couldn't hear it.
Oh, I'm just, what generated us doing this now? You know what I mean? I think it's a good idea. I mean, if someone gets sick, obviously, we all know what goes on. But why, if this Board of Finance never did it before, why did it come up now?
Yeah, look, I can't address the time before I was on the board. But each period of time, I'd say it's every other year, we look to the salaries to adjust them. And we've always kind of struggled with the selects, again, because there was a broad range in the comparables.
We'd never discussed this aspect of it at all, ever. We did at one point talk about an additional amount coming from public utilities. We did talk about that type of arrangement, but we've never discussed this.
We've, and, you know, maybe I'm
Pursuant
being
to
a
the
little
charter.
too, fair enough. We've talked about this, the 10-9 salaries.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in that discussion, we realized that the range of pay for selects is much broader. We'll see when we get into the comps for the town clerk and the first select. They're not all over the place. They kind of have a regression analysis kind of stability to them. So this was a way of compensating for additional work done, right? The 14-day period corresponds roughly with vacation and then some personal days. And so it would be stepping up above and beyond that. And it was, right, just, I think, a time to address it.
And that's great. So I'm trying to just, and I think the answer is no. Has this ever happened? And Bob K would know because he's, you know, you've been here for quite a while. Has it ever happened that selectmen have stepped up for 2 weeks or more for the first selectman? That's all I want to know, because I'm wondering if it was ever handled in the past. That's all.
I mentioned before that.
You answered that.
When
But
Matt-
were they ever remunerated for that?
What was that?
Was there any
Not
remuneration
compensated.
for
No,
that?
there wasn't. There wasn't.
Okay, that's my answer. I just didn't realize that, you know, that it happened and they weren't paid. So now I get it.
So my question is this for every day or just business days? What's our thinking on that?
I'll just,
So-
every day, the process, and Bob and Brad can describe it in painstaking detail if we want it, right? But the process is a formal one. The first select issues a letter that says the first select appoints this person to stand in for this period of time. And as you know, we all know, a lot of these volunteer roles are 24/7, 7 days a week. So it's all the days that you stand in. And Rich is on the line. I think Rich was here to talk to us about the water if we needed to, but he can add color to this as well. There are some days probably when it's really slow and it's an easy 75. There are probably days when it's not so slow. And, you know, so it's
If they're
each
taking
day.
over for Matt Knickerbocker, it's probably going to be 24/7 with the phone next to your head at night. Honestly.
So Robert, it's each day.
Okay.
Would Rich have to do all the blogging and the posting or no? Is that part of the salary? Smile, go ahead, smile.
I thought he was
okay.
gonna do Twitter. I thought Rich is a big Twitter guy.
Right.
He's more of a Snapchat. The kids all do.
Yeah, Rich, did you want to add to this discussion?
You know, for the past 12 years, I've been appointed selectman when Matt's out of town. Normally it's, you know, just his 2 weeks vacation, but there was a situation when his parents were still, and I filled in for approximately 42 days during that particular year. And I see where you get $75 from, but I represented the town at HEFCO meetings, meetings at night, Board of Selectmen's meetings, government council elected officials that meet in Richfield. Those meetings could be 4 hours long by itself. Yes, Bob, I agree. Some days might be slower, but I'm also out doing other town business, checking on projects and stuff. To maybe Nick can remember one night I had to go up to the schools one night. So it's a 24/7 job when the select was out of town.
So I think 75 is a little on the meager side. The fact that this is not going to kick in until after a 14-day period anyway, I suggest that we base it on an 8-hour day and $15 per hour. I suggest that we raise the $75 to $120.
Are you amending the motion?
I am amending the motion as such.
I second that.
Okay, further discussion. Up, Brad.
I just asked the question, is it after 14 consecutive days, so on day 15 you'd get paid? Or is it once you hit 14 for the fiscal year, any additional day is at the rate?
Yeah,
I
it's
just
gonna,
asked this because we're gonna have to pay it.
yeah, it's gonna have to be within a fiscal year, right? I mean, everything we talked about budget wise.
Okay, but it's not, so if Matt takes 2 weeks off, there's nothing, but he takes another week a month later, that whole week would be paid.
Well, 14 days, right? So if the first select takes 5 days 1 week, 5 days the second week, comes back on the following Monday, we're only on day 10.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to count the weekend too. Well, unless it's not consecutive weeks. But if he takes 3 1-week vacations, that third 1-week vacation would be paid out on, correct?
Yeah. And
So you're not talking about consecutive days, is once they hit that 14 days that the second would be acting for selectman, the 15th day, even if it's non-consecutive, would be paid.
I think that's right.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yep. No, that's
And I think, Brad, that's a good point. So we have to have someone in the first selectman's seat on Saturdays and Sundays. Even though they may not be days in the office, we still have to have someone who is in that role on those days and available. Is that correct for emergency purposes?
You know, I think you have to look at how Matt writes up the letter, because if he says, I'm going to be gone from Monday through Friday, then it's only the 5 days and he's back
Right.
Sunday.
Right.
But if he says, I'm going to be back the following Monday and I'm traveling Saturday and Sunday, well, then you got 7 days there.
Okay, so it would be dependent on the length of time he would be out of town.
Yeah.
Okay.
well, and the extent to which Matt in that letter, the first delegates authority. And again, it's what I've seen in the past, it's a pretty formal process. Right. So it's pretty clear that the days of delegation are stated.
Mhm.
So that's the question I was going to ask, what Brad just asked, but just to clarify. So if Matt writes a letter that says, I'll be out the 1st through the 15th, that includes the weekends, and that's 15 days, even though it might only be 10 business days. And once we've hit the 14 days, then this is a paid position, even if it's just 1 day. I'm out sick next Monday, whatever. So the days begin to accumulate and be paid after the 14th day.
And typically, just so you know, Karen, if Matt calls in sick for the day, he wouldn't go through the formal process of appointing Rich.
Gotcha, thank you.
Bob, Brad, do you have any, since you came up with the 75 because of it's kind of comparable to the town side for stepping in different roles, do you have any concerns with a higher number?
I don't see anything wrong with that.
I would support this change in the motion, but not support any more to the 5,500. I think the selectman has always been an elected and voluntary role in my eyes. And I think it's more of just a thank you from the town for the time. And again, I know Rich spends a lot of time and Paul spends a lot of time, but I think they do it for the love of the town. But the 5,500 is here. This is a little thank you in a card. I would support the 120 after 14 days, but keep it at 5,500 for the year for the stipend.
And Nick, to be clear, that was what I was suggesting. If people want to talk about doing something else, otherwise, that's fine. That was consistent with what I thought.
All at one time, right?
All right.
I would support 100. I'm not sure I would go to 120, but I just trying to figure out where the motion is now, because we didn't formally amend the motion. So what do we do?
So the motion, I did hear an amendment to the motion. Robert Palmer amended, Daleen Foster seconded.
Oh, I didn't hear the second, Dion.
I don't think it was voted on though.
But it was not,
No.
but it was not voted on. So
Yeah, I didn't hear the second. That's good.
the second there. Now,
Right, so-
I just want to check and make sure the motion that I have doesn't have anything about the $5,500 for the selectmen. We're
That's
not
correct.
yet. Okay.
Yeah, we're not touching that.
Okay.
Fine.
And that was the purpose for citing the charter section, right? To make sure it's different.
So
Alright,
do
so-
you want to
One more
vote
question
on
on
the
this topic.
amended?
Go ahead, Brad.
Are all these changes that you've made effective for July 1? Are they effective immediately?
July 1.
Okay, just want to make sure that's on the record that it's July 1 changes.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I said that to start with, but
You might have.
Yeah.
yeah, it's good to check. All right, so we've got the amended motion from Robert, seconded by D, 120 a day. All right, so no more discussion. All right, all those in favor of the amended motion, please signify by saying aye. Okay, pass unanimously. Oh no, Cynthia, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I said that I would go for 100, but I wasn't with the
Oh, sorry.
120, sorry.
No, okay,
Yes,
so
I may.
4-1. Okay. Next.
Well,
Town cl-
Nick, how did Nick vote?
I voted
Yes.
for.
Okay.
It
So
was
it was
5-1.
5-1.
What did I say? I said 4-1. Yeah. Okay. Town clerk. The material handed out.
Excuse me, that was amending the motion. Don't we have to vote on the motion now?
I guess is that technically correct, Dion, or
Is anybody-
Robert is challenging Cynthia for our Robert's Rules lawyer.
I think we're covered. I don't know. Amended motion. Doesn't that supersede the motion?
Dion, you're on mute.
I'm just talking away. Yeah, that was to vote to amend the motion. That is correct. So now we need to vote on the motion.
Gotcha.
Okay, all those in favor of the substance of the amended motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? There you go. Okay.
Put a heads up, Robert.
Yeah. Added
What are
value.
his rules?
Robert's rules.
Exactly.
A lot of Roberts.
All right, moving into town clerk. And the material that Bob sent around earlier shows the comparables for the town clerk role in Bethel as opposed to some of the surrounding or adjacent towns. The one item that I would point out is, and Robert, Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, the balance shown here, reflected here for the Bethel town clerk, the 69,607, that does not include the parking lot stipend.
Correct.
That is correct.
So and remind others probably have a more nimble mind than I do, but please remind me, what was that number? Was that 5,000?
Yes, it was 5,000. That's paid from the railroad account.
So one could say that the all-in compensation for the town clerk is about 74,607.
Correct.
All right. I'll just throw a suggestion out there. If we want to make a motion around it, we can. I would suggest that we bring that salary up to what the Brookfield number is, so that there's there's parity between two very similar towns, neighboring towns. And I think, Bob, you had mentioned that given some of the way that the salaries were negotiated and medical expenses were divvied up, that perhaps that small bump up to the Brookfield number would keep Lisa whole, in effect reimbursing her for the additional medical contribution. Can you?
Correct. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, medical insurance is going up. The co-shares are there at 14%. So, her cost is going to go up for the additional premiums that we're going to have for the new fiscal year. So it's going to keep a whole, maybe a little bit more for, an additional salary for the year, just like any other employee is going to get too. But all the other employees are going to be charged that co-share as well, so it's going to keep her, pretty much level.
So Bob, I'm sorry, Brookfield's salary, what is your thought of the increase?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at the material and I'm sorry, Nick, was that to this Bob or to Bob K? Okay. Looking off, just referring to the comps that Bob had shared with us, and I believe these were prepared by Phyllis. The Brookfield salary is 77,810. Our town clerk salary of 69,607 plus the 5 comes to 74,607. I'm doing this real time, Brad, so correct me if I'm wrong. To equate the two would require an adjustment of 3,203.
I'd like to make a motion to do whatever you just said, to increase it by 3,203.
And I end it, but for discussion, you told
Yeah,
me-
sure. So
I
we've got,
like the second Cynthia's motion.
okay, now discussion. Go, Nick.
All right, I caught a little bit of slack when I considered that 5,000 stipend as salary, because I would think it's salary, but I just remember to ruffle some feathers on it. So her base salary is 69. So you're saying 74. What I don't want to make the mistake to raise her salary to 77 and then she gets the stipend. So are we saying it in the right words? Do we want to add 3,000 to the 69,000 salary and then her stipend is off? Because some people don't consider her stipend salary.
Yeah. Listen, the 5,000 does not come out anywhere of, it's in the train station fund, which it's this completely separate animal. So she gets paid for that work. That's from my understanding. So I know what you're saying, Nick, but wouldn't it be reasonable to just raise her salary to the point where if you add 5,000, it will be the Brookfield equivalent? No?
Right.
Oh,
Yes,
I
Is that
think
what we're doing?
Oh, okay.
the 60 plus the 3. So again, 72,000, and then let that stipend come from wherever it comes from.
exactly.
Yes.
And just to put numbers to it, Brad, correct me, but just to flesh it out with numbers, the current base salary, 69,607, would be increased by 3,203 to come to 72,810. The 5,000 stipend added to that number would get to the 77,810, equating Bethel and Brookfield town clerk. Did I do those?
So we know what you're talking about.
Okay.
I have an accounting question, just that, and I just don't remember. Does that 5,000 show up in her salary on the budget, or would her salary still read as 72 something or other?
Her salary would, for the general fund budget, would be 72,810.
Right, and then the 5,000 would.
Her
would come from that
W-2,
source. Okay,
the W-2 would include the 5,000.
Can I just
Okay.
add one thing? I don't know if you'd want to consider inflation when you set this, because Brookfield salaries, I'm sure, is the current salary, and you're setting a salary for July 1. If you want to equate her with Brookfield, there's a chance that Brookfield's going to go up 1 to 2% in July 1st.
I would support this original motion, and we'll deal with next year when it comes to next year.
I have a question about the data. I don't know if Phyllis did it, maybe Bob can't answer this, but I'm wondering about New Fairfield, New Milford, and Monroe. I don't see those on the list, and I'm just kind of wondering, like Monroe is the same size as us. And I'm just kind of curious, like why were the towns picked that were picked, and why were those left out?
I didn't, can you say that again?
Yeah, Bob, I see that for me anyway, there's 3 towns that I usually equate like our taxes to, our home values to, if I'm doing the analysis of like our mill rate and that kind of thing. And one is New Fairfield, one is New Milford, and one is Monroe. And I don't see them on here unless I'm just missing them.
No, I think Phyllis just used the adjacent towns like you have there. Towns in Fairfield County that are equivalent to us. Either in, well, I'm looking at Sherman, and Sherman doesn't have the population that Bethel has, but
And it's not Fairfield County either. And I don't think Brookfield is Fairfield County either, is it?
I think it is, yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
I thought we were the last town in.
Phyllis would be the one to answer that question, why she.
Okay.
Brookfield is Fairfield County.
Can I just jump in here just because I've gathered this information before in the past? And, you know, a lot of times you are reaching out to the towns around you and trying to get some comps as far as population. And you have to rely on who gets back to you. I mean, this is literally picking up the phone and calling other municipalities and asking them for information. And sometimes, you know, sometimes you get that information, sometimes you get the phone calls back, sometimes you don't. So it could be just as simple as that.
I'd move the question.
Do we have to vote on a move? Can we just vote? We just vote on the question. All right, so we have, I'm sorry, Cynthia, did you have another question?
No, I'm just saying, yeah, let's
All right.
just do that.
Right, so
I mean,
there's
Robert,
Cynthia and Bob, Robert seconded it. Is that right? For this, the salary of 72 something.
72,810.
all right, no more discussion, no more questions. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? None. Okay. So
Were you opposed, Cynthia?
no, I
No.
made the motion.
Crazier things have happened.
Well, tell me about it.
She was thrown out because I second your motion, so.
There you go.
I
Threw
can
the
see her
whole
being
thing
out of
off.
sorts.
The whole feng shui.
Yeah.
all right, let's keep it going here with the first select. Here's the data that we have. I believe it was 2 years ago that we adjusted the first select's salary, kind of similar timing, thinking that we were coming into an election, and this was a way of maybe making the role attractive to folks who might think about it in terms of not only sacrificing for the town, because no doubt all of these roles are sacrifices for the town, but might think about it as well as in a financial matter. And that, at that point, I guess we brought the salary up to 95,000, and the comps. These are comps, I believe, Bob, correct me, are these comps on first selects, right? These are no town managers. These are just the first selects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So if there were town managers, the town managers, my recollection, were even much higher than these roles. So this is just first selects. And you see where the town is. I equate the first select to a CEO of an $81 million a year in revenue company, more if we take in the utility, and a $2 billion in asset company, right? The grand list. And to me, the 95,000 just seems low if we're going to try to attract somebody who maybe has the experience and the love of the town that, you know, can do the role. So I'd like us to think about increasing the number. I would do it in a measured way. I'd love to say, right? I think we'd all like to say, let's bring it up to the upper echelon of the numbers, but I don't think that's necessarily what we can do. But what I'd like us to think about is a $10,000 increase to the number to 105. You'll see here, that would basically put Matt in, or put the role still on the low end of the spectrum, but at least now kind of within spitting distance, maybe. So I'll stop talking again. It's based on that kind of my analogy of it's a CEO of a company, and we want to try to attract folks who have that skill set.
I'll go first like I normally do. I would support an increase to that position. It's not a political thing. I think we need to attract the right people. But I just think 10,000 in 1 year, especially that we're still in a pandemic. I don't know if anybody watches it on the news. I would support a smaller one.
BobManfreda, I just don't think we made a motion to discuss this yet.
Okay, fair enough.
My brain can be failing, but.
No, that's right. Now we have two Roberts rules.
All the
people that
Roberts.
We're gonna have to adhere to. I will make a motion. Hopefully it'll be seconded for purposes of discussion to increase the first select salary to 105,000.
Second.
Discussion, Nick.
It's the same discussion. I would support the raise to the position, but I just think 10,000 is just too much. I understand that we're 81 million. I would have liked 80 million this year, but we didn't get that. So I would support a smaller one, but I wouldn't support 10,000.
So Nick, your thinking is that it should be incremental over a number of years? Is that where you are?
I'm thinking that the position definitely should be more than 95, but I think 110 is too much. That's just in my gut. There's no calculation. There's no percentage. I just think with everybody still struggling, I know there's a lot of government money. I just went to the Dominican Republic because they gave me $10,000 in this house, but I just think that position, we need to slow roll this thing a little bit slower.
And Nick, I may have misspoke. It's been a long day. What I meant the motion to be is to increase by 10,000 to 105.
Can I take back, if anybody's taking notes? I think I would support.
It's been a long day. I'm sorry. Cynthia, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually would support that 100%. And that's because I think the position requires a lot more than any other position, obviously, in the building. I think that, I have memories of Matt foregoing his raise in the past. I think that he definitely deserves more. I mean, the guy works like a maniac, and I think I'm fully supportive of this. Whatever the $10,000 increase.
Again, I would support the 105.
Yep.
Going to the position, and I make a motion to move the question.
Second.
Get them while they're hot.
Let's just vote. Exactly.
Get
Let's
'em
just
while
vote.
they're hot.
Any more discussion of the motion of raising it to 105? Okay, not seeing any. All those in favor of the motion to increase the first select salary by $10,000 to $105,000, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry if I did muddle up the words there. All right, so that concludes the discussion of the 10-9 salaries. We are now on to the comptroller's report. Robert, to you.
Okay, let's start off with revenue, first page. We're at 77,739 of the 79,765 that was budgeted. The percentage collection rate right now is 98.32%. And comparing it to prior years, the 2009 grand list, which is last year's, we were at 98.13 at this time. So it's an increase of about 0.2. And if you look back to the 18, 2 years ago, we were at 97.48. So roughly 8.5 ahead of the numbers from those years. So I think the revenue is, we're in good shape. The areas that are still suffering is the interest income, and also the park and rec revenue. Although we did have some major increases this past month because the camp opened up. Matter of fact, the third-party server crashed because there was so much activity on it. But park and rec were moved up to 200,000 from where it was the prior month, but the interest again is still at 52. Our conveyance taxes and building and zoning permits, they continue to exceed the budgeted amount. So that kind of supports some of the items that are on a lower side. As far as the expenses are concerned.
Before you move to expenses, in terms of Park and Rec Rev, is this the period right now in the next month or so, that a lot of the income for Park and Rec come in, or is it flat line? What's your forecast?
This is prior to the end of the fiscal year. They collect, Brad, what, 50%, 40% of their revenue typically?
Yeah, 50 to 60% of the revenue usually comes in after March 1st. Just to give you a heads up, since this report was done, Park and Rec has collected another $36,000 in credit cards. which is where the majority of the money comes now, because most of the programs are online.
So what's the forecast, in broad terms for Park and Rec this
Well,
year?
I don't
It
think.
was 600, right?
Make the 640, but, I think 350 is not out of, question. Another 150, I mean, Brad just said 36,000 since the end of the month, and really we got 2.5 months, if you look at it from that point of view. A month and a half to 2 months to go, so I think we'll talk, maybe another 100,000 or so.
Okay.
I take it this is all spring and summer activities, programs?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's kind of what you would expect, right? People are, okay.
Yeah.
Got
And
it.
it seems like according to Eileen, the people are, they're ready to get out there and do things, and so they're signing up the kids, real quick. I think we're gonna be fine with the revenue. We may not have a surplus like we had in prior years, but I think we're gonna be okay. And then moving on to expenses, we have the usual, culprits. Right now, the professional services are over by 51,000. We budgeted 251 and we're at 301. But I think, I look back to last month and the increase is only a $20,000 more in deficit. So it's hard to tell, how the attorneys are going to, invoice us, but I don't think we're going to have another $100,000 on top of the 50 in deficit at this point. The other expenses are pretty much in line. I mean, there's probate court like always, but we get reimbursed for that. Town insurance looks like it might be over, but it really isn't because all the payments were made. And we do get, we allocate to the Public Utility Commission the insurance for sewer and water. So that's gonna, bring that number down. It's gonna be in a positive position. Building maintenance, we had some additional expenses there was at one of the schools, we had to remediate and take out, it was at the high school, the oil tank, the underground oil tank that had to come out. So that caused a little spike there. And, the Park and Rec is obviously, it's a positive position, but we're down as far as total expenses. Because then for the first 2/3, 3/4 of the year, they haven't done anything. And then if you look at the miscellaneous charges, it looks like we haven't spent anything in that, but that's where we have the capital non-recurring that we have to transfer. We have the wage contingency, whatever's left in there. And then also, let's see, the senior center is down a little bit, they haven't spent what they thought they were going to. Their budgeted amount was 243. They're at 135 at this point. So overall, and the library is the same situation because they were closed. But I think even in the expenses, we're going to see a positive position. You move on to the Board of Ed maintenance, and we're looking at 118,000 on the 460 account. That's negative. But we have an encumbrance from last year in there for 63,000 that has to be written off. Not written off, but reversed out. And then we also have some capital expenditures from the prior year that was approved to be taken from the general fund. So that number is pretty much going to come in line with the 445 when we get to the end of the year. So I think, Brad, what the amount to the fund balance is from the prior years, what, 45,000 or so?
Yeah, at this point, I believe that's correct.
So Bob, again, I'm a little slow in terms of the Park and Rec. We have close to 500 unexpended. What's the anticipation that we will expend that additional 500 or will be?
No, I don't think so. If they're going to spend another, 150, it may be a lot, because, we'll be collecting the revenue for the camp, this year, but then it's on a cash basis, but then the expenses for the camp will be in the next fiscal year. So.
Okay. And the same question for senior center. That seems like a lot of money to expend in the remaining.
Yeah, there's no way they're going to spend that much money. I don't think they're opening up until July 1st anyway. right, Brad? Didn't Matt say that?
Yeah, I don't think anything's set in
No,
stone, but I think.
They're
that-
opening June 1st. I talked to Rosemary today.
Okay, okay, so a month earlier, you know.
So some of this could be transferred to professional services or something like that, some of the
Correct.
excess.
Mhm.
Would that be the anticipation?
Yeah, when you look at the overall expenditure budget, I think we're gonna be fine,
Okay.
totally fine.
Overall, you will have a,
Surplus.
will be short of what we appropriate, right? Our expenditures will be less than what we have appropriated. Is that what you're anticipating?
Probably a
Okay.
little bit less, yeah. Mhm.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Bob and or Brad? Nick, you want to motion this?
I'd make a motion to accept Bob Kay's report as presented.
I second Nick.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 We have come to the end of our agenda, so entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, all, thank you very much. Thanks for sticking out through a long night. Take care now.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.